And we're back with Ward 15 candidate Sheena Sharp. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
So, this time is different this time around. Jay Robinson's no longer with us. Uh,
Yeah.
this is the reason for the by election. And I'm just wondering, for our audience, I mean, they know you because you were on before, but maybe just let them know why you're running, and then Phil and I will have questions from there.
Okay. So, I've run twice before, once provincially, once municipally against Jay, and I came second. Um, and the reason that I keep running is I've been an architect for just over 30 years. We focus on low carbon building design, so net zero, passive house, that kind of stuff. All electric. We focus on how we need to transform our economy to decarbonize it, right? And but me and my team, in fact, they all agree that we can't actually get there one building at a time, and it's really frustrating. And some of the policies that we need in order to get there are just not being put in place. Certainly not by the City of Toronto or by any level of government. And so I think I have something to offer because I know how to make these happen at a building level, and I think I have something to offer at the municipal level to set up policies different. And how, like, what am I talking about specifically? Well, City of Toronto has a goal of decarbonization by 2040, right? That's 15 years from now. That means most of the buildings that'll be here, there are already here, and no new buildings should contribute to our emissions. But right now we don't have, we're still building buildings based on gas. The cheapest way to decarbonize Toronto would be when your furnace dies, you put in a heat pump. Norway, for example, is at 80% heat pumps right now. We're less than 10. We're growing slightly, but we're less than 10. So we need things from the municipality, like being able to say, you cannot replace your gas furnace with another gas furnace. And we need the City of Toronto to go out to Toronto Hydro and say, prepare for decarbonization because you're going to have the whole pie. And we need to get rid of the Portland's gas plant. And so we need to figure out there's municipal parts to that, approvals, and essentially we need a new line into the city, probably under the lake from Pickering, for example. But we need a new line in order to be able to get rid of that gas plant. So I know these are all kind of dorky things, right? But but when we think about it, like I think you guys should be more worried, and if you have kids, that you should be more worried for them because I'm going to be dead by the time this poop really hits the fan. But people who are under 30 right now, when they're in their 50s and 60s, it's going to be floods and hurricanes and heat waves and things that will really, if you think things are unaffordable now, just wait, right?
Well, we
And
love
so,
you for commenting on our age, but I'm over 40.
okay, okay.
Um, Real quick, because you are an architect, because you are
Mhm.
uniquely qualified, I gotta ask,
Yeah.
Phil and I both say infrastructure, it's not sexy. However, it's necessary.
Yeah.
What does the city have to do infrastructure wise to, because this past summer we got hit with two that
Yeah.
I'm aware of very big floods.
Yeah.
One I got stuck in, took me
Oh
a
no.
long time to get back to my, because I deliver
Yeah.
downtown and then I drive back to my
Yeah.
work at the end of the day to pick up my personal car.
Yeah.
What do we have to do to, I guess, make sure we don't
To
flood
flood
again?
proof us.
Flood
Yeah.
proof. That,
I
yes.
mean, the city is doing a few things because flooding is actually pretty simple in a way. Um, you have to slow the water down and you have to get the water to soak into the ground, right? And so we are in a watershed that extends up from the Greenbelt all the way down to Lake Ontario. And so anything that happens along that path, by speeding it up, by straightening creeks, by putting creeks underground, by paving everything with asphalt that is not that water can't soak through, right? And so the city is already doing some things, like they're building this big bypass storm sewer that's going right through Rosedale, right? I have a friend who lives in Rosedale. He was kind of shocked. I was too, because I thought that was politically difficult thing to do. But anyway, they're doing it. Um,
Sometimes we get the wins.
well, it's that the water's gonna to bypass the city. We have some infrastructure at the bottom of the Don Valley that is kind of like I don't know if you've been to the Portland's development, but there's this. I went to visit it when it was being built, and they have built this huge channel, and they put upside down um, dead tree roots into it to start it out, so the fish would have a place to hide and hang out. And but they also have two emergency overflows. So as the water comes down the Don, it will go over right into the lake, or normally it will turn around and it can also go over into the lake in a second direction. So they're doing some cool stuff. Um, but some of the uncool stuff is like that they've been doing for a while, but they don't manage very well. Like no pervious driveways, like disconnecting downspouts. Most people have that, right? Even if there's like 6 million of us, if we all do this little thing, um, like trying to put in things like rain gardens to help the water, to store the water on our own properties before they leave. All of this is terribly unsexy. The other thing that they have to do that is also happening in Ward 15 is they have to get rid of the combined sewers, right? So the combined sewers are kind of interesting. It's if you have a pipe like this and you have a wall, but it doesn't go up to the ceiling, right? It only goes part way, and there's poop on one side and there's stormwater on the other. So when we have a big storm, the stormwater rises and it goes over the wall and they mix, and then sewage goes straight into Lake Ontario,
Ooh.
right? I know it's bad, but it was cheap. It was like a cool idea when they did it. Oh, we can
That
only
is what
put in.
happens with the floods,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The
Yes, that's why the beaches close after a flood, because we put sewage straight into Lake Ontario. So I know. Well, anyway, they're replacing it. Okay, Philip, it's okay. They're replacing it.
Hey, listen, it's I can be while it's currently gross.
So yeah, so they're doing things like that, and I think partly like as I knock on doors, you wouldn't believe it. Like this is an issue, particularly between neighbors, because they're like, well, I had to put in these weird stones in my driveway, but that guy just paved the thing over, and nobody ever complains, right? And so there's a little bit of education that's required, and there's a little bit of enforcement that's required in order to slow the water down. And one of the bigger things is get critical infrastructure out of the above grade. So like you remember the last flood, the west side of the city went dark, right? And it went dark because the transformer vaults are underground. So they filled up with water and then the power went out. So,
I got
you know, that,
stuck. I got stuck in East Liberty Village or
oh,
Liberty Village
yes.
for 90 minutes. Nothing was moving. I was I was upset.
Well, my office is in the junction, right? So we were all sitting there working away, and the power went down. And we're in an old part, like in the junction village, so the infrastructure isn't that great anyway. So the power often goes down because some squirrel like sacrifices itself or something, and the whole thing disappears. But it was just like, is this a short one? Is this a long one? Now, Toronto Hydro has improved their website, I think, so they told us it's going to be like 9 hours, so we all went home. But but that kind of thing we need to do something about. And the only good news is that, like, if you consider my house, so I electrified my house, right? And so I used to pay a bill to Enbridge and Toronto Hydro. Now I pay one bill to Toronto Hydro, and it's slightly less than the two before added up, but I pay one bill to Toronto Hydro. And so what does this mean? Like, obviously, Toronto Hydro is going to be swimming in money because, and Enbridge is going to go broke. right? But, they're a private company. They saw
Sorry,
this
I
coming.
just the way that you said that, and I frankly appreciate it. If
Well,
the product's no longer viable,
then
that's
what?
what private business works.
Exactly. That's how it works, guys. Like, and you wanted to do this and you wanted to take profit, so here you are. And you lost this particular, or I don't think they have because they're busy with the misinformation all over the place, right? But with any luck, they will lose this particular round. But Toronto Hydro, people say, well, where's the money coming from? Well, it's coming from the money I used to give to Enbridge and all the other people who are doing it, right? So we do have one problem, and that is, and I know we're jumping all over the place from floods to back to electricity, but so so with that extra money, they need to expand the system and they need to do some climate mitigation, some safety measures, and just strengthening the infrastructure. But so back to, oh, I'm sorry, I lost my spot. We were talking about.
We were talking about a lot of stuff.
We were talking about a lot of stuff. Um, so back to the electrification. I mean, the city of Toronto can do a lot of things, like, for example, we are the sole shareholder of Toronto Hydro, right? Now, I know Toronto Hydro has departments that are busy doing a few things, but like busy working a bit on climate adaptation. But we have to tell them what it will look like and how much it will cost to actually move to electrification, right? And the other thing we have to do, this is what I was going to talk about, is so as Enbridge goes down, if we don't do it in an orderly fashion, the people who will be hurt are the people on the lower end of the income scale. And that is because few people realize it, but Enbridge isn't mostly a gas company. It's mostly a construction company that builds pipelines, distribution, right? And so they get paid up front for building a pipeline. And that money that they got paid goes into a mortgage, which all of the ratepayers in Ontario collectively pay, right? So as people start to get off gas, and I can tell you at the doors, people are telling me, oh, I already did it. I have a heat pump. Yay. Um, as they start to get off gas, the people who are left are going to be the people who didn't have the capital to spend an extra $2,000 or $3,000 when their furnace died, right? And so suddenly their prices are going to go way up because the mortgage is going to be paid by fewer and fewer people. So this really, and it might involve a little bit of corporate welfare in order to make this work. But we are going to have to figure out how to get people off in a timely fashion. And I don't think that corporate welfare is a good idea, but I do think we're going to have to figure out how to either pay to keep it on for a bit longer or some scheme.
Bill?
So, well, first I did want to make a little bit of a comment just at the end of we talked last week, not
Mhm,
us personally, but
mhm.
um, there's a Toronto Star article that was talking about John Tory and Kathleen Wynne endorsing certain candidates in Don Valley West. Honestly, this has nothing to do really with the conversation. Just at the end of it, there's like a little paragraph that says, other candidates in the ballot on the ballot include architect and environmental advocate Sheena Sharp, food and lifestyle educator Leslie Stoyan, and international development consultant Habiba Desai. And I just thought, those are all municipals. We talked to them all. Sorry, that's me being cute. That's not like a question or anything.
Yeah.
That's just that's the most important title that you can take from this. That you are a municipal. So I hope you
Okay,
appreciate that.
okay.
Um,
I'll, yep, go ahead.
so so I was gonna ask you
Yeah.
your thoughts on housing affordability, but it really does feel like on your website you do have some pretty clearly defined steps.
Mhm.
Land trusts, focus
Yep,
on co-ops.
yep.
Really it sounds like upzoning
Mhm,
areas. Like
mhm,
solid stuff. And actually this week I was in a community, not a community, yeah, it was a Toronto consultation meeting
mhm,
about a I can't remember what it was, a neighborhood in Paula Fletcher's ward about where
Okay.
they were trying to ban garden suites just for a specific neighborhood, which I just what a it was a very silly meeting because it was
Yeah.
basically everyone, all the community, all the people joining the meeting were saying, why, like, we're in a housing crisis, why are we
Why
banning
are you doing
anything?
this?
And
Yes.
every single like staff response was just like, it's so great to have all this difference of opinion. It's like, no, listen, people are telling you
They're telling you one
don't
thing.
do this.
Yeah.
Um, so I so I mean you've got it pretty well laid out there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you'd like to maybe quickly summarize for us some of your thoughts on housing affordability and how we can get there.
I think we have at least three crises, maybe four. One of them is homelessness, and homelessness shows up with people sleeping in the subway and people sleeping in parks, right? And it shows up at the door. I actually talked to one guy who was like, "I want to know what's in it for me." And how come there are tents on my running when I run on the Beltline? How come there are tents there now? Like,
I've heard the what is in
uh,
it for me conversation,
yeah.
so I understand that.
And I say, like, you want not to have people sleeping in our parks. You want not to have people because it is scary for some people. And some people say, um, their teenage kids are unsure about how to deal with it if they get challenged by people sleeping in the subway, right? And so I can get that. I remember those days. Um, so I think, but it's really homelessness, and at the level where people like private development works because people can afford to pay rent, right? So all the cost of the development gets put into a mortgage, which the building pays off through income from rent, right? It's a pretty simple formula. If you have no income from rent, you cannot do this. So people who are making like sub $20,000 a year, maybe 30, but definitely sub 20, there is no way the market can deliver to them. And so these are the people that the city should be giving up land for and focusing on nonprofits, which they do a lot of that. I mean, I'm not saying that I would come in and and say things they had never heard of, but I think another voice focusing on it and strongly supporting it and pushing it and checking to make sure it's working, I think that's a valuable thing for council.
Can I just, I'm sorry, I just want to step in for a second.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a program called Housing First?
Yes.
I think it's a beautiful program.
Hmm.
There's a 20-minute clip. It's from Finland.
Okay.
We've already discussed it on the show.
Yeah.
I if you don't, I'd love to send you the video.
Hmm.
Basically, there's a basically they renovate all the shelters. Everyone
Hmm.
has individual rooms that
Yep.
lock on the
Yep.
inside and
Yep.
outside,
Yep.
and there's also a mandatory um, treatment component for both addictions and mental
Hmm.
health.
Yep.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I actually think that this is what Toronto needs.
I think it's absolutely what Toronto needs. I mean, Vancouver has it in inside and onsite, right?
Really,
And
that's what it's called.
the insight is I'm gonna get them mixed up because I know someone in Vancouver who's been very involved in this. So one of them is a safe injection site essentially, and it's on the ground floor. And so they kind of keep people alive until and when hopefully they decide that they want to live a different life, right? And in that particular program, it's an abstinence program, but so they have the safe consumption site, and then when you decide, you can move upstairs into essentially what you described, like a room with a bathroom and a microwave, and they have programming like it sounds kind of dumb, but they have cooking, which is normal, but just getting you hooked up to social services, but then also like yoga and meditation and counseling and
Those are
stuff,
all
right?
great programs.
It
Those are
keeps
all,
people
I
busy.
know. It's great. It not only keeps people busy, but it sort of gets your body moving again um and cooking healthy food and eating healthy food. And so that program kind of gives people what they need to move on. And just as an aside, so we had a shelter here like, I don't know, 100 feet from my house, the Roehampton Hotel. And it had problems because they were, um, they did not have a safe consumption site on site because the landlord wouldn't agree to it. And so then people were doing drugs like in backyards and the schoolyards and everything, right? And one of the programs that I really liked is one of the local churches or a group of the local churches stepped up and said, how can we do something to help? And what they ended up doing was preparing welcome baskets for people who were coming in. So that would have bedding and towels and cutlery and, bowls and stuff, everything you needed to live there. And but it also created a connection to the community. So with a bunch of measures for cleaning up needles and um, allowing people to do drugs in their rooms and the sort of connection to the community. I mean, people apparently were moving there through there in about 8 months and moving into more stable. But there were a variety of people, like people with addiction problems and people without addiction problems, right? So they did all that. I would like to talk about a little bit about the safe consumption sites because I had that experience, which the community stepped up, the city stepped up, but I've also had other experiences, like in my office in the Junction. Our next door neighbor is a cafe, and they gave someone the key to the bathroom, and then 20 minutes later, someone else said, "Oh, where's the key to the bathroom?" And the person who had first asked for the key overdosed in the bathroom and died. And so, and because we're like normal people, people come in and say, "Oh, I'm desperate to use the bathroom." We say, "Sure." Um, but I know people have actually done drugs in our bathroom, and then we get really nervous. So I guess my point is that if we don't have safe consumption sites, then everywhere is an unsafe consumption site. And we will be, um, like, if we want to be selfish about it, we will be finding more people who have overdosed, which is not a good plan. And I think it's really, I want people to live. And I want people to get a second chance or a third chance, right? But that's what the safe consumption sites are doing. Because if they're not there staying alive, then they're in our commercial bathrooms dying and or in our backyards dying in the shed. Like this is not a good plan. So,
Yeah, during the pandemic when a lot of these places were closed,
yeah.
I noticed because I work as a concierge at a condo downtown,
Okay.
and we've got like a courtyard next to our building,
Yeah.
and way more frequently I was finding people, trying to kind of hide away in these little
Yeah.
kind of stairwells, cubbies,
Yeah.
and they'd
Yeah.
be passed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So like I'm calling the ambulance for these people because well, obviously. And
Yeah.
but I did notice when there was one opened up, I forgot the name of the park. It's close to where I work. So
Yeah.
maybe I don't want to dox myself and name the park anyways.
Yeah.
But that just stopped happening. Like, summer
Yeah.
was coming up and I was
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
oh, that's something to deal with, but it doesn't happen because
Yeah.
they have this place to go where
Yeah.
they have the chance to be safer instead of doing
Yeah.
it on their
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta ask. I'm sorry. What do you say to the people? And I mean, I'll include myself into that.
Yeah.
That say that safe injection sites enable drug use.
Well, I think that um, the things that enable drug use are when we have, people who are inquisitive and people who want to experiment, and we are essentially under siege with illegal drugs on our streets, and so it's really available, right? Once someone is hooked, like even look at something like cigarettes because it's easier to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's one of the hardest things to get over. And so this it's kind of like I heard someone say it was like we're taking away this life jacket because we'd prefer you learn how to swim, and swimming lessons are in 4 years. Um, the You know, like this is not a plan. This is a symbolic solution. This is not a plan, right? And so I think that the nature of addiction is such that it takes people, I can't remember how many times to get off cigarettes, right? And so the idea that are we enabling people by giving them nicotine patches? Are we enabling people by sort of giving them a safer route and then an even safer route and then trying like when they are mentally ready to face it, which is not necessarily right now or right at the moment, when they are mentally ready to face it, then they can try abstinence. Like
We've
it
been
just
having
doesn't
this
make
conversation on
sense.
our
It's
show.
just, yeah, like it's not enabling, it's supporting until, because I think, I guess it's not true of all drugs. Like some people would be perfectly happy to keep taking cocaine, I understand, as long as, um, but, but, you know, the kind of drugs that impact your work and your life, you slowly spiral down, right? And so it's not just I don't want to take the drugs anymore, but it's like I'd like to have a better life again, right? I'd like to have relationships. I'd like to be able to go places. So I think there's a built-in incentive for people to abstain, but they have to be ready to follow that incentive. Like I don't think if we I don't think if we keep people giving people drugs and their lives keep going downhill, I don't think that's actually what they want. So,
Phil, do you have another question from the website?
So this actually isn't from the website.
Oh, okay.
This is more like a weird. I understand the desire, wanting to run for city council specifically so you can be, you can kind of be that voice for the specific change that you see.
mhm.
But when I hear you talk with your expertise, I do sort of wonder, well, why you don't have a job with the city itself? If that does that sound crazy? Like working for the either the planning department or somewhere there. Like again, I understand why you'd want
Yeah,
to be a counselor because
yeah,
yeah, I got that instinct and I understand. But
yeah.
it's like you really do have that expertise, and it really makes me think like that you'd be such an asset to um
We need the expertise on the staff side.
yeah, that's what I'm
Uh,
saying. Yeah.
but
You
I
could you
think,
could you could be
yeah,
one of the, I don't know, what do they have, 12 deputy city managers? We need
really,
we
really?
need
I thought it
we
was
need
less,
you.
but okay. Yeah,
I don't know. I'm
okay,
just, it's
okay,
just, yeah. But I
yeah.
think I agree
So
with Phil. I
I
think you
hope you
belong
don't
at the
take offense
city.
to my
No,
premise because I see it as like you have very um you got such expertise in the area that right now, especially what we're talking about with infrastructure being this like this taboo topic for I don't know, politicians don't
yeah,
want to talk about infrastructure.
yeah. Well, okay, so I think that expertise is required at all levels. And I had sort of a mini run. I was on the Ontario Association of Architects Council for 12 years. And it's got lots of committees, and you try to get things done by moving things through committees and building support, and our staff is very skilled. But the purpose of the political side of the organization is because we bring expertise in from the outside. And the debate between the staff who are trying to pull programs together and the political side can be very rich when there is expertise, right? I don't think council has the expertise that I have on council right now. I mean, we need a variety of expertise, so I would be one of the few people who has actually worked like for 30 years on the pointy end of the city stick, right? And and I think that that feedback is quite valuable, and it's only valuable at the political level because within the bureaucracy, it's not visionary. It's supposed to be enacting, right? And I shouldn't say it's because a lot of the people within the staff do want to be visionary and they do present visions, right? But I really think that it's the politicians who should be directing those visions, who should be enacting those, who should be creating those visions, right? And so I think that a different voice at the table would be useful.
I
No, that
agree.
tracks. Makes sense.
I'm just
Because
aware of
like
our.
I've always
Sorry, go on.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say like because I've always thought of it as I I'm sorry, I keep directing it towards my experience
Yeah,
running, but
yeah.
I always thought I'm not a fucking expert in anything. But it's like but you'd want to
Yeah,
be able to take like you sort of see I see a lot of city council and a lot of the work being done at the
yeah.
city as being very they have an idea and they sort of they're very they want to do one thing and if they want to ignore good advice from outside,
Hmm.
then they just kind of bring it to committee or ask for another report, like
Yeah, they
make it
just prolong it. Like
yes.
that is a bad council. And I hope I'm not speaking at a school, but OAA council could do that too. Even though they're like, a little fish, like big fish in a very little pond, right? They would like, oh, well, we need another report. Oh, it was only when they're not sure, right? They don't feel confident of the decisions. And sometimes the information being brought forward by staff was not exactly everything that was needed. But uh, you have to have a lot of discipline, like not ask not ask, like not feed your own uncertainty by asking someone else to go to hours and hours of work, right? When you really have to have some discipline in thinking about what you need and where you're going, and if we've gotten there yet, right? And I'm speaking in generalities, so I don't know if I can give any examples other than the other thing that is can be really dangerous is when the political side um, they they come up with ad hoc solutions. And so sometimes that can be really dangerous as opposed to clear direction. Like you've presented this, we asked you to go here, it does not go here. It does not go far enough, right? Go back. Bring us back something that actually meets the goal that we want to hit, or tell us why we can't hit it, right? But you do have to have a bit of expertise in order to tell whether or not it's what you're being presented with is quality stuff, right? So,
Absolutely. And I'm just aware of our time. I just want to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the listeners, to the voters of Don Valley West, and don't forget your website and anything else that you want to say before we wrap it up.
anything else that I want to say? Um, I think that we shouldn't be afraid of change. Yes, we should watch that it's actually enhancing. I think that we want a complete community. We want a place to grow up and a place to move out and a place to have kids and a place to retire to. Because otherwise, like the most important things, people talk about community, but they don't connect these things, right? Like, so when I was really small, I lived across the street from my grandparents. And my grandfather, who had recently retired and started to volunteer for things, he took me everywhere. Um, and so those kinds of bonds are created because you can have a kind of a drop-in relationship, right? But if you live 3 hours away, which is where we're kind of going, right? I know two people who work for me have moved out of the city because they want to have kids. And so, we don't have a community when you don't have the choice to stay close to your family network when we keep pulling these family networks apart. And the opposite side of that is that when you look at building a low-rise six-story apartment, which is the cheapest form of construction, right? So if we can get costs out of the approval side and costs out of the construction side, we might be able to start to bring housing down to a point where more people could afford it. Like we talked briefly about homelessness, but then there's the whole middle class housing side. And the whole fact that if you're spending all of your money on housing, you're not spending money on hobbies or participating in things or kids programming or any of that kind of stuff, right? So so we need to figure out, and the municipality has a big part in this. We need to figure out how to lower those costs. Like in 2018, the Ontario Association of Architects, um, because I was part of the head of the committee, we did a study on how much it costs um, for the time that something is in approval, right? And they came back with $2,500 per unit per month, and that things were in approval between 9 months and 24 months. So if you were buying a new condo, it could be $60,000 that you're paying for the approval time, right? So that's definitely in the city's backyard. How do we speed up? How do we maintain the quality of approvals while speeding them up? And then the other side is how do we create opportunities through zoning for people to build six-story wood frame houses or people right now, I mean, the federal government made us um, as of right, you can put 3 units on any single family lot, right? But so what will that look like and how do we enable things like standard um, condo agreement, like mini condo standard agreements for mini condos so that there's a template and we reduce the costs from like from people like me and lawyers and to put these things in place and to make them flow. And that's not going to hit some of the lowest that you know that might reduce the cost of a house from 1.2 to a stacked three condo, maybe $900,000. But so that's not still that's pretty darn expensive. But it does sort of start to address one group. And I think if we have different, maybe 3 or 4 different solutions, I think there are 3 or 4 different solutions, which we don't have time to discuss, but that could start to bring things back into balance. And I think one of the biggest things is nonprofits. And another advantage we can use is like CMHC has a lot of programs. When I say a lot, there's probably 5 or 6 that finance rental buildings, right? And I've worked on a project in Sudbury, so the land was cheap, but we managed to bring that in for 30% of the average income in Sudbury, 100% of the units, and we did it through some of this. It's a net zero building,